In credit, 83% of people have an error. A fourth of the people that have an error, it's substantial enough that they get denied a loan they would have otherwise had. And these errors usually account for more than 1 point, but here's the significance of 1 point. If you're at a 719 credit score and you could have been at a 720 and you went and got an FHA loan for $200,000, you know what? You'd be paying $6,000 in closing costs just to buy the same rate. So we're talking about money in your pocket when you understand this. And in the old days, it used to be, if you had a pulse, you could pretty much get a loan. And a 680 credit score was pretty much suffice. Then they went to a higher standard of maybe 720. Now we're looking at maybe more like 760 or 780. Now, obviously, if you're in the 800s, that's a pretty big deal and it's pretty easy, but we also have to learn about the depth of your credit. Because you can have a good credit score and still not get a good loan as far as if it's a bigger loan because you don't have enough history or enough depth to your history. So we're going to go through and say, how do you improve your credit score, which will lead to better cash flow, it'll lead to maybe better insurance rates. Right now, I think we've got the best interest rates since I've been alive anyway, but I've heard up to 80% of people can't take advantage of that because they don't know how to maximize their credit. And so a lot of it's just understanding, how do you take the test? There's this test out there, it's called getting a credit score. If you don't know how to take the test, you don't know how to get the right score. Because some of it I don't really think is necessarily common sense. I mean, some of it's even counterintuitive. Right. So, you know, why don't we kind of just dive right in and start talking about this? I mean, what's the first thing that you would say about credit that people need to know?
Is the amount of your credit you use is a big deal. It affects you in a positive or a negative way depending on how much you have available and how you utilize that.
So we're talking loan to value basically.
Yeah.
If you have $10,000 available to you and then you go, you know, put a purchase on there for $5,000, you're now at 50% loan to value. 50% of the value that's available to you, you've used up. That's loan to value. And you know, I used to think, you know, you don't want to have too much available to you because the more you have available, it looks like you know that you're somehow that was going to lower your score. And what I found is actually the opposite. The more you have available that hasn't been used, the better off you're going to be. So you have strategies, don't you regularly kind of increase your credit limits?
Yeah. So once every 6 months, I make it a habit of just calling my credit card companies and asking them if they'll increase my credit limit or if they'll lower my interest rate. And initially, I ask if they'll do it without giving me a hard inquiry. Because you may have enough of a history with them. American Express is famous for this, where they track your spending well enough that they know whether you can handle more credit or not.
Right. So what you mean by hard inquiry is there's really two types of inquiries out there. There's the soft inquiry, which is, let's say I go subscribe to a credit service. It could be Experian, it could be Equifax, TransUnion, it could be, there's a whole bunch of services that are also in conjunction with that. And I could say, I'm going to go look at my score. That's not going to show up as an inquiry. It's pretty much invisible. It's me taking a peek at what's going on, right? Right. But then a hard inquiry is maybe I'm going to get a car. And when I go to get that car, I'm finding out if I'm credit worthy. And so when they pull my credit, that's actually a hard inquiry. And you know what? I made a mistake early on in my life. When I bought my first car, I went and bought an Acura. And I wasn't sure I was going to get the Acura. I was looking at other cars, and I went to multiple Acura dealerships, and I went and looked at other vehicles. And every dealership I went, first of all, I was pretty young at the time, so they were probably wondering, well, this is kind of an expensive car for a young kid. So they always looked up my credit. And what I found is it lowered my credit score because I had 5 inquiries in a very short period of time. So I just want to make sure that we have that distinction. Soft inquiry versus hard inquiry. Dale, what do you do to kind of monitor your credit and kind of make sure in this, and then we're going to get back to loan to value and what that means.
So the way I monitor my credit is using a service called myfico.com. I know Ryan uses Experian. There's a lot of services
MyFICO is maybe the most accurate.
But they're the most accurate. I think they use it, you know, for mortgage inquiries the most. And so I typically go through a scenario where every 3 months I'll pull my credit. And what I'll do is I'll pull it through TransUnion, then I'll pull it through Experian or Equifax, yeah, right. So it's all on myfico.com that you can pull those reports. But going back to the point,
and I think it's important. You got to pull all 3.
You have to,
because here's the thing: you might have one that's a much higher score than another. I saw that discrepancy once because we had an error on Carrie's report, and this was part of the increasing 79 points. Was that there was really an error, and it was like 701 where there was an error. Right, and yet on the other side, you had the 762. That's a pretty big discrepancy amongst 2 of the bureaus. So I think it's important to look at all 3 bureaus to really see what's happening.
Absolutely. And what I was going to do, I was going to backtrack just a second, Garrett. just like you were talking about the actor going out and looking for loans, a lot of mistakes that are made are when you go apply for department store cards. I know my wife and I made that mistake when we were first married, where we'd go out, go to Kohl's, we'd go to, whatever it was, and we'd pull, 3, 4, 5 department store cards. And the same thing happens. The ideal amount of inquiries in a period of 2 years is 2. So if you're going out multiple times, more than 3, 4 times a year, you're going to have 5, 10, 15-point decrease in your score.
And so we're going to get back to loan to value, but while we're talking about inquiries and we're talking about MyFICO and the credit monitoring services, I think the first step anyone should take is they should look at what errors they have. If 83% of people have errors, go look at the errors. I mean, and it's the little ones matter. Your name being spelled wrong, or in the wrong order, middle name first. I mean, you got to look at all 3 bureaus. Is your address correct? I actually like the idea of just having a PO box for everything. That way, if you move, you have one place that your mail always comes, because they look at how long you've been at somewhere as part of your credit history. I mean, there's all these little nuances, but look at where those errors are. Where you work, is all of that listed right? Are they showing accounts that are actually closed as open? Are they showing, that's where you maybe find that late payment in there? What are some of the other common errors that you guys see?
Duplicate accounts, the same account twice.
Right.
Which that can really affect your utilization if that's one where you've utilized most of the limit on that card. What if it's showing twice?
Right, so maybe as we go back to loan to value. And here's one of the things I've seen as one of the major errors is that they don't report the limit. So you go and you have $10,000 available limit, you go charge $5,000. If they don't report that you have $10,000 total available, that when you go spend the $5,000, it looks like it's maxed out and it starts to hurt your credit score. So if they're not reporting, that's in their interest, because now you're getting less competitive rates and less offers from other credit card companies and things that way. And so what can people do if they find that situation there? Where do they look for it on the statement?
So when you go through your credit bureau report, it's going to report your high balance, so the most you've ever owed, what you currently owe, and your credit limit.
Right.
And what you want to do is make sure they're all accurate. And a lot of times it will just say 0 or be blank on your credit limit. So there are 2 ways to fight that. One is to call your credit card company and say, hey, can you report my limit?
Right.
Or you can actually go and dispute that information is inaccurate. And everyone's entitled to a free credit report from each bureau every year at annualcreditreport.com. So even if you don't have a service, you can go pull it there and see if it's accurate and dispute right online.
Hey, I hope you liked the video on credit. It's just a little snippet of our curriculum for wealth. If you want to find out more and get more detail, you can go ahead and click right on here and it'll take you there. Now, if you haven't subscribed, subscribe right now or check out some of our other videos. Also, we always love conversation. We want to hear your comments. We want to hear your insights so we can keep this going.